In this video, we will review how to multiply and divide rational expressions. So I have my expression here, and these are the 3 steps that I am going to use throughout this process. So the first step I am going to do is factor the numerator and the denominator for each fraction. So I'm going to start with x squared minus 9. I know that I can use the difference of squares here to quickly simplify that, or quickly factor that. For x squared minus 10x plus 25, I need 2 numbers that multiply to 25 and add to negative 10. So that's going to be x minus 5 and x minus 5. Bring down my multiplication sign. 4x minus 20 can't be factored in the same way as the x squared minus 9, but I can factor out a 4 from both the 4x and the negative 20. So I'm left with x minus 5. And then I have my quadratic here, x squared plus 5x plus 6, which would be x plus 2 times x plus 3. So at this time, I'm going to take a minute and look at my domain restrictions. I like to identify the domain restrictions at this point because I can clearly see all of the factors in the domain. But once I start to simplify, some of these might get canceled out, and I would have to come back to this part anyway to state the restriction. So our domain restriction is any value of x, or any value of whatever variable you have, that makes the denominator 0. Now, we cannot have a 0 as a denominator because we cannot divide by 0. So that is going to be a restriction. That is an excluded value. That is a input that makes this function undefined. So we have to say it's all the other values except this one. So we find our domain restrictions by seeing what values of x would make the denominator equal to 0. So here, if I had 5 minus 5 would be 0. Same thing here, 5 minus 5 would be 0. So x cannot equal 5. And when I'm looking on this side, I see that negative 2 here would make this equal to 0. And negative 3 here would make this equal to 0. So x cannot equal 5, negative 2, or negative 3. Those are my domain restrictions. And finally, I want to come back to this, and I want to simplify. I want to see what factors I can divide, what factors I can cross out. And I see I have a x plus 3 here and an x plus 3 here. So x plus 3 divided by x plus 3 is 1, so I can cancel those out. I have an x minus 5 here with an x minus 5 here. I cannot simplify these. Like, I can't cross those out because they're in the same, they're both in the same denominator. But I can cross out from top to bottom because what it really is just saying is that x minus 5 divided by x minus 5. Well, that's just 1. So if I cross it out, I'm not changing the value of the equation. Now look again, I have nothing else that has a match, so I will rewrite my answer as this 4 times x minus 3, and then this x minus 5, and this x plus 2. So this expression here is our simplified version of this multiplication. These two things have the same value. All right. Now, in our next one, we're going to see how do we divide. So the process for dividing is very similar to multiplication. if I'm dividing by this, I want to turn this into a multiplication sentence, and I can do that by dividing by the reciprocal of this. So I flip this around, and I can do that on both sides. These cancel and cancel, and now I'm left with this multiplication sentence. You may be familiar with something like keep, change, flip, but this is the mathematical process that makes that possible. Those two things are the same. And now I just have a multiplication sentence. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can solve this one on your own. So I start by factoring out my common factors here. And, sorry, not equals, multiply. And so now I am going to state my domain restriction. So x cannot equal 5 or negative 5. It cannot equal 4 or negative 3. And now I can simplify. And all that I'm left with is negative 4 divided by x plus 5 and x minus 4. This is my simplified version of this equation, and these are the domain restrictions.